What did London look like just hours before one of the most devastating fires in history? What kind of city existed before the flames erased it almost completely? And what secrets were hiding inside its narrow streets? Today, we're going to walk through London as it stood in the summer of 1666,
just before the Great Fire changed the city forever. In the modern world, London is a city of steel towers, glass skyscrapers, and wide roads. But 360 years ago, it was something very different. Imagine a city of nearly 500,000 people, packed inside medieval walls built hundreds of years earlier. The streets were so narrow that houses on opposite sides nearly touched. Most buildings were made of wood. Roofs were covered in pitch. Upper floors leaned out over the street like crooked teeth. And in the dry heat of September 1666, the entire city had become a perfect fire trap. But the danger wasn't just the buildings. London itself was chaotic, crowded, and incredibly dirty. Waste was dumped directly into the streets. Open drains ran through alleyways. Animals roamed freely, and the smell was something visitors never forgot. Yet despite all of this, London was one of the richest cities in Europe. Ships arrived daily along the River Thames, unloading spices, silk, tobacco, sugar, and exotic goods from across the world. Merchants grew wealthy, markets bustled with energy, and the city never truly slept. But beneath this prosperity, the city was sitting on a hidden disaster, and almost nobody realized how close it was. To understand how dangerous London really was, you have to look up. Many houses were built several stories tall. Each floor extended further outward than the one below. Builders did this to save space inside the crowded city walls. But the result was something strange. In some streets, the upper floors of buildings nearly met in the middle. Sunlight barely reached the ground, and when wind blew through the alleyways, it turned the streets into natural chimneys. Now imagine a single spark in a city built like that. Fireplaces burned constantly, candles lit nearly every room, blacksmiths hammered metal beside open flames, and bakeries operated ovens day and night. Small fires were actually common in London, but most of them were contained before they spread. At least until one early morning in September. On September 2nd, 1666, a small fire started inside a bakery on Pudding Lane. The baker was named Thomas Farriner. At first, it seemed like just another minor blaze, but something was different that night. A powerful east wind had begun blowing across the city, and London was dry after a long, hot summer. The fire leapt from building to building with terrifying speed. Within minutes, entire houses were on fire. But the real disaster was still coming, because the design of London itself was about to turn a small fire into a firestorm. As flames spread through the narrow streets, the leaning wooden houses became fuel. Fire jumped across alleys, roofs ignited, and sparks were carried through the air like burning snow. Soon, entire blocks were on fire. The city had very few ways to stop it. Firefighting in the 1600s mostly relied on buckets of water and tearing down buildings to create fire breaks. But the mayor hesitated to order homes destroyed. That delay proved catastrophic. By the time stronger action was taken, it was already too late. For 4 days, the fire consumed London. It destroyed over 13,000 houses. It burned 87 churches, and it wiped out most of the medieval city inside the old Roman walls. Even the great St. Paul's Cathedral collapsed in the flames. When the fire finally ended, nearly 80% of London's historic center was gone. Yet something surprising happened afterward. The disaster forced London to rebuild itself. New buildings were constructed with brick and stone instead of wood. Streets were widened. building codes were introduced, and a new St. Paul's Cathedral, designed by Sir Christopher Wren, would rise above the city skyline. The London we recognize today was born from those ashes. But if you could travel back to the night before the Great Fire, you wouldn't see a ruined city. You'd see lanterns glowing in crooked windows, merchants closing their shops, horse carts rumbling through narrow streets, children running through crowded alleys, a living, breathing medieval city, completely unaware that by morning it would begin to disappear forever. And that is London just hours before the Great Fire of 1666.